if they try for a year and it turns out that they are truly lousy, and frustrated all the time and can't keep up with the pack, and that's making it no fun for them, then that's one conversation. But it's not because they can't. It's because it's not enhancing their life. You know, and if you're lousy, but it's still enhancing your life and you're not dragging anyone else down, like, I guess that's the line on any team where, like, right, we have a different standard. I am sure that Texas cannot hang on to an athlete pulling an 830. Like, they have no place in a boat that they're not going to be disruptive. But there are loads of teams that do have room for that athlete to take the time it needs to, you know, like, there's programs that are just already up and running at a speed, and it doesn't mean that rowing's not for that person. It just means that place is not a good fit for them.
With that, ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So for everyone listening, we have Beth Greene here, head coach for the Ithaca College women's rowing program. I'm very excited to talk to Beth. We've already been chatting a little bit, kind of getting some conversations going. And I was like, freeze, let's save this for when we're recording, because this is going to be some fun stuff to dive into. But Beth, I'm very excited to have you on, very excited for our conversation. And first things first, I would love for you to share a little bit about your story and how you got into coaching and how you landed on Ithaca and what's going on, a long career at your alma mater, which I'm very fascinated about and I want to actually dive into here as we kind of get this discussion going. But the first thing I want to dive into is, you know, you guys had your conference championships this past weekend. You qualified for NCAAs. You have another race this weekend at the National Invitational, and you are kind of already in the dance, you know, at the in the quote unquote tournament, you know, for the national championship. And I think that's a unique position to be in, and at this time of year. And I'd love for you to kind of talk about, you know, this past weekend qualifying for the national championship, and then more importantly, kind of what's on the horizon over the next 3 weeks. Obviously you're racing this weekend. But what does that mean for, like, I would love for you to educate the audience on what that means for the team. When do classes kind of wrap up? Are you still in classes? What does the practice schedule look like as you prepare for a race that's, you know, a long gap of 3 weeks or so before your next regatta? But with that, maybe you can start with your introduction, and let's dive into some of that stuff as we get rolling here. But Beth, please introduce yourself and let's dive in.
All right. I'm Beth. I am back in my alma mater. I came to Ithaca. I was class of 2000. I was a theater major, which goes right into coaching very easily. And I learned to row here as a novice. I had a cousin who was a coxswain for the Merchant Marine Academy. And when he came to visit at some point when I was still in high school, was like, maybe you should try this. So when I saw the boat on campus, I was like, oh, I'll try this till I find something else to do on campus. And, you know, it's polarizing. I fell in love with it. It stuck. When I graduated, it's the first sport I tried where when I worked hard, I actually got better. And that was very addictive. And so I was curious whether I just liked being good on my team or whether I could be good on a bigger scale. Like, did I like the sport or did I just like success? So when I graduated, I lived in Boston for a year, started rowing at Riverside up there. Got a kind of invite through. So, Nick Kermakov was my coach for that year at Riverside, and he was friends with Igor Grenko, who was looking for people to repopulate Augusta after the national team, like, umbrella had left there. And so I was one of the athletes invited to go down and learn to scull, and train that way. I had lived down there for 3 years training with a group that had a lot of successful lightweight men and So, and some open women, a little less success with the open women, but still we were a good crowd for a while. Ended up in Connecticut training after that for 2 years at Saugatuck. From there, went to Philly for 2 years to train with a doubles partner. And then when I was done with that, I called up Becky. So Becky Robinson, who is the head coach here at Ithaca, who just retired last year, she was maybe in her fourth year of coaching, of being the head women's coach when I went through as an athlete. I didn't know that. She's really gives off the impression of like, I've been here forever and I know what I'm doing and just trust me. Even when she was in her fourth year of coaching. So I called her and I was like, what do people do when they're done rowing? She's the only person I knew who had been done with elite rowing and kind of who I knew personally, who had gone on, here's what I'm doing and I love my life. And she's like, well, you can coach while you figure it out. You can come back and coach for a year. And I was like, okay, that'll be fun. And I love it. I came back and I realized there was something very healthy in the transition from elite rowing to figuring out why you love the sport in the first place, or remembering why you love the sport in the first place. I think I saw a lot of people at the elite level stop rowing and they were mad at the sport, or they felt like they only had one skill, or they were like, great, I'm going to sell my boat immediately and never talk about it again. and I was like, I did this for so long because I love it. What's important about it? And there's a lot more of us that will never make an Olympic team than those who do. And so if you're 5'2", but you love to row, why is it still important? Why is it still important if you're just learning, or if you're bad, or if you're never going to be the best? Because I had just spent 8 years beating myself up for like not being the best. And so it was a really healthy thing to come back to coaching. And I really liked being the same way that I like being part of a crew as a rower. I like being part of a team as an employee and as a coach. Like, I loved going back to a coaching team where I really trusted the people I was with. I was happy to be an assistant for 14 years as a full-time assistant, also 2 years as a part-time assistant, because I was part of a system that worked really well, and I trusted them and they trusted me, and I felt like I had purpose, and it just felt good. So that's why I was a little bit afraid when I came back here that it would feel like you were trying to, like moving into your parents' basement or something. But it's been a good place, and it's definitely a different place to be here as an adult than it was as a student. Not that college students are adults, they're just baby adults. I don't know.
And before we get to like the current team and all that and what's on the horizon, as a walk-on who learned how to row in college, like that's what I did. I did at, kind of similar path, St. Joe's, learned how to row here, and then spent 2 years in the real world trying to see if that was a fit for me. Definitely wasn't. And then went back and coached for my alma mater for 6 years before, here we are. But I feel like as a walk-on, someone who learned to row in college, like that enthusiasm that I was able to kind of galvanize in those 4 years of being a walk-on, where everything's brand new and you're starting to kind of see yourself rise to the top a little bit quicker than maybe people who started, in high school and are a little bit more experienced. And for you, and okay, you're here today, you said class of 20, so 20 plus years later from your undergrad years, still with the same enthusiasm and coaching and as a head coach. What do you feel like, number one, what was your athletic experience prior to going to Ithaca? And then do you feel like being that walk-on or having that energy kind of as a 4-year athlete has helped, or as a 4-year walk-on has helped kind of keep that energy alive, where it's like, hey, this means something to you, kind of being part of this team? Like, I'm curious about that because I've talked to so many coaches and elite athletes who started rowing in high school. And I'm always curious, or started rowing in college. I'm curious how that path they feel assisted their, rowing career, rowing journey. So long question, but if you don't mind.
Well, like I said, by the time I finished college, I didn't know if I just liked being successful or if I liked the sport. I, um, I'm not, I'm not the tallest rower. I'm 5'10" on my driver's license because I lied to US rowing for so long. But I, uh, I did gymnastics. I was a extremely large gymnast, which meant that I had a ceiling. So I would work really hard and kind of be okay. Like I was okay for a high school gymnast, but I wasn't good um by a like grander scale kind of thing. And when I tried rowing, like there is a lot of artistry and creativity in gymnastics. And I was like, this is the same motion over and over again. This is going to be boring. But I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And it was interesting to me that something so simple could also be so difficult and could also make you go to all sorts of places that you didn't expect to go. And the team aspect of it, the being part of a greater thing and the kind of like acceptance and yeah, that other people have for, to be part of a good functioning team. Like you can go fast and not like your teammates, but you're going to go faster if you have good trust. Which trust is not even the same as liking someone. but I think even as a college athlete, I remember being in the boat and thinking wouldn't have been mature enough to handle this. I don't think I would have twisted myself in knots more. I mean, I think we all do on some level when you're trying to do something and get better at it. I think I would have had a harder time trusting the process. And I mean, it does help that all of a sudden I was finally doing something I was built for. Um, and it was weird. I was part of a novice class that the upperclassmen called us the mutants because I was like the short one of Stern Fort. It just happened to be a really weirdly tall group of walk-ons. And of course it was like the late 90s. So everybody was a walk-on. Not everybody, a lot of people, except the very top programs. It was still the years of like, you would have 100 people come to the novice info meeting and then 50 people would come to the first practice and it would slowly pare down. So we were both that just felt like we accidentally had success. We were all big. We were crushing people by 30 seconds. And we just didn't know any better. And we saw like the varsity boat that year, they were very serious and very intense. And we're like, oh, that's weird. Why do they have such a hard time winning? Like we were just real doofuses. So, but that's great. Like the not knowing. And I think one of the most interesting things about coaching, like I'm really trying to come around to recruiting because I know that it's necessary. And I know that there's amazing athletes in high school. But part of me is still like, I have this love for there's something special about adults who are willing to try something new and be bad at it before they can be good at it. And I think that if we can keep doing that throughout our lives, like when's the last time you started something and when you start, you're going to be really bad at something, but we're so used to like this achievement, accomplishment driven, like it's not worth doing unless you're going to be awesome. And I don't believe in that. It's really fun to be awesome. It's really fun to win. But I'm consistently impressed with I'm more impressed with the people who will take a risk on something new. I don't know.
I
It's a balance though, because it's
yeah.
like I love the risk and the do it because you love it, not because you're awesome. But I also then think excellence is interesting.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's again, I think how does that, it's kind of like taking chances and risk and trying new things, then fuels like a new energy in you, and then you kind of are seeking that again, like as it's like there's that fine line between risk and kind of where like that competitive line of risk where it's like just challenging enough that's still worth pursuing versus, hey, I'm going to kind of, this is something that's way too out of my league. And then you get discouraged because you're not that good at it. And it's like, how do you kind of find that fine line and keep going? I think rowing offers that too, because it is you know, even for, the high school athletes who rowed 4 years in college, or sorry, 4 years in high school, when they get to college, it's like, okay, well, how can they, kind of step out of their comfort zone in the same way people like yourself or people like me kind of jumped into the arena on the rowing front once we landed at school or at college. Like, how can they kind of have that same mindset heading in, where again it stays fresh, it stays something that they want to be a part of, not just for their 4 years in college but beyond, like people like you and obviously me, right? Like it meant that much to us, kind of towing that line of trying something new and failing at it and trying to get better. That anyway, I love that conversation. And how do you feel like that mindset affects your current coaching, that you're with athletes now at today being a coach at Ithaca and having success? Like, are there things from that experience, as again, your time at Ithaca, where maybe things were a little bit more and focused on the brand new athlete to the sport? Are there things that from your prior years as an athlete that you've now brought into your current coaching as you are now head coach with this current roster, with this current team?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think well, because even though we were bringing people on, right? Like it's different in that more people were walk-ons then, but it's the same principle that wherever you are, you can improve, as opposed to like you have popped out fully formed as a person able to pull a 620 and you know there's no it's remembering that nobody is done. I think that there's like we look at someone who's made a national team and we're like, wow, they just are amazing, but they had to take a first stroke at some point. And um and like we're allowed to take different on ramps. There was something that you said that like I kind of went to two different places, and I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to like wrap back around it because um so you asked how it's useful today, and it's basically like that I'm not going to look at an athlete and count them out because they're not there yet. Am I going to boat them in the 1v immediately in their like probably not, but I'm also not going to be like, you're bad right now, this isn't for you. um I I think it's interesting because, right, I said I was a theater major and I have like this kind of the especially when I was in college, I had two groups of friends. I had like my artsy theater friends and I had my sporty friends. And there's not a lot of overlap. And and okay, so this is kind of the trying new things as well, where all of us, by the time we got to like our late 30s and early 40s, I was seeing something really interesting where someone who's a theater professor is now starting to run marathons, and someone who is a composer, same thing. Like she took up running and she never realized that she could. And people love the stories. Like we love knowing that people can change and adopt something new. And back in the kind of theater days, like one of the things, I had a chorus teacher that really hated when people would be like, oh, I can't sing, because it's just, you wouldn't pick up an oboe and be like, oh, I'm such a bad oboe player. Are you a bad oboe player if you've never tried to learn it? But when it's something that's part of your body, your voice or being an athlete, people are told so early, this is for you or this isn't for you. Like, oh, you're an artsy person, you're not going to be an athlete. You're an athlete, you're not gonna. I do know athletes that play the guitar and that, do our 1V Coxon is in an art show right now. She, uh so so I think that there is like this ongoing, it's not just in coaching, but it's kind of this life thread of, I'm not going to look at someone and decide what they can or can't do, but I'm going to give them an opportunity and say, do you want to do this? And then, right, if they try for a year and it turns out that they are truly lousy, and frustrated all the time and can't keep up with the pack, and that's making it no fun for them, then that's one conversation. But it's not because they can't, it's because it's not enhancing their life. And if you're lousy, but it's still enhancing your life and you're not dragging anyone else down, like, I guess that's the line on any team where, like, right, we have a different standard. I am sure that Texas cannot hang on to an athlete pulling an 830. Like, they have no place in a boat that they're not going to be disruptive. But there are loads of teams that do have room for that athlete to take the time it needs to, like, there's programs that are just already up and running at a speed. And it doesn't mean that rowing's not for that person. It just means that place is not a good fit for them. And so for us, like, we thankfully have enough space, that unless someone is really, really off the back of the pack and having a miserable time and dragging people down, then I want to give them a chance, the time to improve. I feel like I went like 6 tangents there. So.
No. And it kind of like, we're going to, it brings me right to kind of like one of the things I really wanted to talk with you about. And, as we kind of like, just with you kind of highlighted it, but like the different intents and different focuses or what you're trying to get out of your college experience. And there's always that balance of, the academics, the athletics, the extra, curriculars, the things that you do, like clubs and other activities, and then obviously your personal life. Like, all these things blend together to make up your college experience. And then, okay, well, how does that influence your trajectory in life and all these different things, right? That's obviously the outcome that we're hopefully achieving, right? To, graduate and go on and do whatever we want, career wise or whatever. But do you feel like, for you, that one of the things I wanted to talk about was with Division III rowing and but a very competitive D3 program, right? I feel like there's probably, gaps in the sense of, okay, there's some, there's the D3 programs that are qualifying for NCAAs. They're fielding competitive, boats. All the athletes are 100% in it and ready to rock and all these different things. And then you're probably going to have, the programs out there that maybe aren't as supported. And, it isn't, they kind of know they're not going to be in that position to qualify or win races. And maybe it's more of, the intent behind their program is a little bit different than the programs like yourself, who are, they're trying to get to, a national championship and compete at a high level. And I think D3 and D1, actually, especially on the women's side, where there are, so many programs out there, there is that kind of probably, gap in purpose behind like the main mission of the team. But with that, if you can, like, describe the makeup of your program, or just, and how it kind of like, and what I mean by that really is like, shed some light on a Division III program, the roster, like, because I always talk to athletes who are interested in rowing at the college level. They're like, hey, you know what, D1 might not be what I want. D3, I'm not too sure. I'm trying to kind of figure out the balance in between the two, and those different programs. But describe a little bit about the makeup of your team, the intent and the focus, and again, take it wherever you want, but that competitiveness, the will to kind of get to a national championship, but also having time, probably I would assume, to pursue other routes within your academic or college experience as a whole. Broad question, but if you can, I feel like that's an important thing for a lot of younger athletes in high school to kind of think about as they're going down this journey of finding the right fit for them.
I think, right, the whole point philosophically of D3 is to impose balance. Impose might be the wrong word, but right, like we're a little more limited in number of required days, and everyone knows we're a training sport, and if you're a fast team, you put out your training plan for optional training sessions, but your entire team knows if we want to be fast and we want to compete, those are you're still going to do the training. And maybe if you can't make it to team training because you swim in the winter, well, okay, you're still staying in shape, and you're still it's interesting. Ithaca talks a lot. There's a lot of these like state of the college meetings where people get together and just kind of, it's almost like a reminder, a team meeting where we remind ourselves what our purpose is, and like why is a family, why is a person choosing to go to college instead of just learning things out of a book or taking courses online. And there are jobs that you can do where it's like, well, I need the certification, I need the doctorate, so it's like they're doing that to, yes, get the knowledge, but also check the box that's like, someone checked it out and I know my stuff. But there are a lot of jobs out there that I'm sure no one had to like come and deign you podcaster, go. Like, you just were like, well, I think I'm going to do this now. So for a lot of people in college, especially liberal arts, like, and I think this is a bigger conversation in the country right now too, where people are trying to devalue what higher ed does, or it's here to brainwash you. Yes, absolutely. No, we're trying to brainwash people into being explorers and open-minded people. And I think that there is something, oh man, there's so many excellent people that come out of every division that it's like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking badly about any division, but I will say that what I love about Division 3 is I think that there's a little bit more of that ethic of, it's your life and explore, not like, here is the definition of success. We will teach you how to check all the boxes to achieve what I say success is. And I think Division 3 is a little bit more of like, what do you think success is? What, how do you want to see your life shaped? And we'll give people, they still have time crunches. They're taking finals right now. And they will have practice in a couple more hours. So they still have the time management issues and it's still a competitive program. Like, I think I maybe used the word interesting before. Like, excellence is interesting. Like, if you don't care about your result, then you're not going to push as hard. You're not going to explore your own mind as much and what matters to you. And you're not going to have the same need to rely on your teammates. Like, so there's something about the results mattering that's what makes us like rise to an occasion and dig deep and have an uncomfortable schedule and do the uncomfortable workout. Like, so I do think that like the results are part of it, but I also, was talking to my boat just the other day about, they're like, who's going to be in our heat? And I'm like, why does it matter? Like, okay, yes, we need to know, do you push to qualify or do you not? But also, like, are you going to feel more proud of yourself if you win or lose? Like, it's based on how you execute, because we could we could go and win NIRC and like feel like real hot stuff. Or we could lose and feel terrible about ourselves, conversely. And it's like, it's the other thing where it's like, if you win against a team that you're really, really supposed to win against, are you going to celebrate like you won the Super Bowl? And if you lose, like say we win NIRC, you know what? There's still a Stanford out there. There's still a, there's schools that, and crews, it's nice to have the reward of being like, here's the medal, here's the cookie, you're a good person today. But, that doesn't actually, it's not really about that. It's about everything else leading up to that. And you knowing that you found places in yourself and executed the way you hope to execute, and that nobody has I don't think that anyone has a perfect race ever. You can always think of like, oh, that one stroke that you took that was weird, or that, that doubt that you had somewhere in the third 500. And maybe if I was just a better person and hadn't was confident all the time, it all would have been different. And oh my God, I'm letting everyone down because I forgot to eat breakfast today. Like it's just some unnecessary mental gymnastics. I mean, it's just like, pick your mental gymnastics. You can do the gymnastics of beating yourself up, or you can do the gymnastics of being so grateful that people give you grace to be imperfect, and to know that imperfect is completely good enough. I don't know. I don't even know if I answered your question at this point. I'm just talking for a really long time.
Well, how just bridging off of that, how for you, like you have a roster of, multiple eights worth of athletes.
That's what you asked about. You asked about rosters, and I told you nothing about rosters.
No. Well, I'm curious, like in terms of like, okay, there's the roster, but then there's, how do you personally, or as a coach, with the other coaches on your staff and all these different things, but like, how do you get a team, and again, you've been at Ithaca for, greater than a decade. You know the program in and out better than anyone. You're now, fully in head coach, right? Like, how do you get the team? Because in rowing, right, we're all going in the same direction, same goal, get to the finish line in the fastest way that you know how to, and then whatever the results shake out after that, is the results. But the same intent and the same drive is there to go from point A to point B, as effectively and as fast as you can. With differences in intent and purpose and why they're in college and how they landed at Ithaca, for you as you shape your culture and shape your team as head coach, what are some principles that you rely on or that you try to instill in your team to kind of get them all moving in the same direction to be able to have the success that they have on the water?
I think we talk about how we are all different personalities, and that there is not one right type. I'm going to steal this purely from, Becky, who was the head coach. She got it from an athlete. There's the like, we're a chain, we're only as strong as our weakest link, blah, blah, blah. I guess this was years ago. And one of her athletes was like, we're more like a body, and we're all organs. And like, you need all of those organs to function together to be a healthy body. You can't have 7 livers, so, and nothing else. So we all actually need to be our different selves. Like, you need the one in the boat who always makes people laugh, and you need the one who gets people to snap back in, and like all the different personalities that can drive each other nuts, and especially like different family cultures. I think different people coming from different families and different locations have different communication styles of, hey, when you tell me directly that you've disappointed me, that's super aggressive. And other people are like, no, that's the most respectful thing I can do. Where it's just what they grew up with and what they're comfortable doing. And I think especially as young adults, um, yeah, they're smart. Like, I think just believing in individuals as complex, smart, capable people, I think what I try to do is draw people's attention to the fact that, like, other people's strengths might not look like yours, but they might have something that you're missing too. And if you can't learn that from each other, then you can at least benefit from the fact that you have this other personality here to provide some contrast or make you think. And in a way it does, like, it makes you evaluate whether, like, you want to be more like that or maybe less like that. And what's worth living with versus what's worth having a conversation about because it bothers you. We have a team rule. It's called fast and true. And part of that rule is that if you have an issue with someone, that you're not going to be able to let go of because maybe it's something repeated, or that you address it with them directly in a timely manner. Like, you address it directly and you try to figure out how to let it go. And that can be anything from, like, hey, like, you're always running in a hair late to practice. Like, that was me. That was one of my teammates, like, was, kind of was like, hey, stop saying you'll try to be on time. That tells me you just know that you're not gonna really try that hard. And I was like, oh crap. All right. Yeah. Like, it's really different having a peer hold you accountable than have a coach. And I think just, yeah, respect, like, I think especially, like, if I'm irritated with someone, I have no poker face at all, which is not always handy, but especially if I'm irritated with someone, what helps me is trying to go back to what it is about them. Like, why is that bothering me? Like, because that's probably more about me than it is about them. And then trying to think about all the good traits that they bring, and then seeing if they can do that for each other. And I think just believing, we're so quick to believe that other people aren't trying as hard as we are. Like, especially if we're working hard and maybe something's going sideways and not well for us in our own lives. Like, and we see someone else and they're like, oh my God, it's just so easy for you all the time. You don't even care. Like, yes, they do. They have their own stuff going on, and either they're dealing with it or they're hiding it, or you just don't know them well enough for them to be open enough with you. So yeah, we have occasional conversations about things like that. I think when we can see, like, yeah, especially in the middle of a frustrating row and the boat's not feeling right, and you're like, I'm the only one trying to set the boat. Like, no, you're not. Like, everyone is trying really, really hard. It's just everyone's going through that. Like, you're all having your wave of being despondent about it at a different time. And it's like, the best you can do is, like, how do you let go of your own frustration to just do what you need to do instead of trying to compensate or trying to, like, have an attitude about it? Because, like, as soon as you've got an attitude, then why would someone else want to keep trying their hardest? Like, I don't know. I think rowing's fascinating like that. It's just a metaphor for everything else.
Yeah. And how do you kind of, like, with that, right, where it's like, hey, like, for Ithaca, right, like the success that the program has had in getting to the NCAAs, right, however many years in a row of winning the conferences and going off and now going to, being in in the next few weeks going to, again, the national championship with the team. How do you kind of foster that competitive side of it too, where it's like, okay, well, we're kind of like, what, like, when you talk about team goals and, like, hey, like, when we're going into this race on the competitive, like, here's what we're trying to do. We want to go, we want to, again, if you can even rewind the clock to last weekend, the conference championships, qualifying, your qualifier to get to the championship. For you as a coach, how do you, I'm always curious to ask this, where it's like, hey, how do people kind of like have that balance of keeping things in perspective, understanding and staying present and being appreciative of what we do, but then flipping the switch where it's like, okay, I'm trying to be, we're trying to get the most out of this race or most out of this spring or outcome, whatever it is. How do you message that or flip that switch for the athletes? Because you wouldn't necessarily be going to, the national championship every single year if there wasn't that kind of like innate competitiveness to get there, right? Like no one gets handed it. It's like, hey, like obviously you guys are doing something right. So how do you kind of flip that switch in the athlete's mind of, let's bring it all together and let's extend the season.
I don't think I can make anybody want it. What I can do is make them realize that they want it. Like I think people do. People want to be successful. They want the medal. They want to know that they've done enough. And the part that holds them back is the fear that if they really try and still fail, then that hurts, like it. And so I think it's less of it, it's more of a like, it depends on the athlete or the group of athletes. But I think a lot of times it's, they want to be competitive, and it's more a matter of convincing them that they belong there. One that they are good enough and that they belong there. Like, I think that's the thing. There's so many things in the world, whether it's Instagram or competition or whatever, like, or apply to this college. Are you good enough? Go to this race. Are you good enough? Like, and where they're like, I have to prove to show that I'm good enough. And some people get really fired up by that. But I think a lot of people also get anxious about that. And they're like, if you're the coxswain screaming in the face, are you good enough? They're like just as likely to scream back, no. I think they're really, really hard on themselves. And so, we look at these big end of season races, NCAA and NIRC, and they're like, oh my gosh, are we going to have to, like, will we be next to Bates? Will we be next to Williams? What about Tufts? And I'm like, they're just people. Like, they are people who, like, they're doing exactly the same thing. They're a bunch of college goobers just like you. And why not you? And so I don't think I have to tap into their competitiveness so much as their sense that, like, their belief in themselves, that they belong there, that they can do it, that they are in fact strong and intimidating to somebody else. Like you guys are, like, you guys are the bear in the woods, they're as scared of you as you are of them. And it's more, and that's fun. That's what makes coaching fun. I'm not in coaching to be a hard ass and tell people that they don't belong. I'm in coaching to be like, why not you? Like, this actually, no, this is possible. Like, I want to show people that it's possible. And when they see I guess that's it. If they see the excitement or feel that it's genuine, that there's no reason, like, there's no reason that they have to fail. But I think a lot of people, especially in this, like, generation, this age that's going through college right now, there's a lot of baseline anxiety. And, like, people are waiting for the floor to fall out under them. And it's like, a lot of people haven't had the thought of, like, but what if everything goes right? They're a little more waiting for someone to shut them down instead of believe in them.
I love that. And I think because a lot of in my, like a lot of coaching to me, and I think everyone probably has their own style of coaching, but like, to me, and this was not the way I thought, when I first started coaching and communicating and learning how to talk to athletes of all different, experience levels and, their motivations. But it's like, I think adjusting athletes' expectations or helping them actually better understand the expectations and getting them to kind of actually put those things into perspective, I think is one of the most kind of unique qualities of being a coach. And probably some people are better at it than others and this and that, but like, it sounds like that's kind of what you do. It's like, hey, like understand, the expectations or the realities and that you can do this, or you have every right to kind of be in the same spot as long as you want it, and helping them kind of see the forest from the trees a little bit and what their goals and actually, what can actually happen if they just believe that they're doing the right thing. So anyway, I think that like, that's one of those like hidden things that people don't think about when it comes to coaching, where it's like, how do you get athletes to really think like that?
And I do think that part of it takes time and it takes energy, and everyone's at different place in their maturity, and some teams don't have the personnel or the time or the bandwidth for whatever to handle the athletes that are at a different point. When I think of a more novice or 3V athlete, like on one hand there's the enthusiasm, but sometimes they're just people who haven't asked themselves those questions yet of like, does winning matter to me? Or like, why am I coming back every day? Like maybe it's just because my roommate tried it and was like, come try this. But they don't really want to be there or do the work. They just haven't admitted it to themselves yet. And there's nothing wrong with rowing is super polarizing. There's nothing wrong with not liking rowing. Like I don't like to swim. I want a boat under me. But there's like no one's going to be like, hey, you quit boxing. You don't like being punched in the face? Like there's nothing wrong with just deciding you don't like something. But especially in rowing, I think there's a very hard, like the not quit culture. Overall, I think it attracts a lot of, I think it's like internally motivated people are really fascinating, in a great way. I think there are a lot of very internally motivated people, but I think rowing, like there's something about the community of it and it just like attracts a lot of people who want the external, like an evidence of I have worked hard enough, I am good enough. And whether the evidence is competition or, the people who are motivated by being a good teammate, who are being a consistent teammate, who are, like I want to be inclusive, but I'm also not like, I'm not going to be like, you pull an 830, but you just want it so much, so you deserve to be in the 1V. Like you can't want your way into the 1V, but like there has to be like concrete work that goes behind it. But I do, I want to give people the space to ask themselves the question of like, does this matter? If it matters, why? And I think when they start figuring out like, why does this matter to me so much, that it does unlock some ability to get really fast. But maybe that's just me and I'm an overthinker. And I think one of the I was entertained by it, like conversations that I had with a friend who is an Olympian, who shall go nameless, was like, we were standing by the Schuylkill and talking about results, and he's like, yeah, I just try to get first. And if I can't get first, I try to get second. And if I can't get second, I try to he went all the way down to like 7th place in this conversation. And I was like, this is why he's good, is because he's got such this single track focus. Like what an amazing mindset. But I think that's just, I don't know whether he worked for it or whether he's just wired that way. It's so interesting to me. I'm like, wow, it must be so much easier to do this without your brain in the way all the time. Yeah.
Oh, that's,
I mean,
that's,
he's brilliant in his own way. But like, that's what was always interesting to me about that friend is I'm like, wow, your brain works like that. It's like so single focused. Yeah.
And I think like one of the things that remind it's like I always kind of when I always think but like this and you know like sometimes we actually perform better when our mind is just kind of like you know completely off you know like the expectations and all these different things or how we feel like when we start sprinkling in. I always kind of use the analogy of like we're stacking bricks on our shoulders and then we expect to make the same climb you know, that we would otherwise completely free of any kind of extra weight, right? Like we stack all these things on our shoulders, and how does that inhibit our ability to get to the top? Versus if, like you said, kind of, you know, with how you articulate that message to your athletes and getting them to realize that they should be here or they deserve this and trying to free them of those expectations, you know, hopefully they can take that with, you know, it's only going to help their ability to perform at a high level. So I think that's a really powerful message for athletes out there. And I want to shift gears a little bit, you know, to now the program and you know with Ithaca and I would love your just overall like you know again with your time as a coach and even as an assistant coach for a number of years at the same school, like I'd love to hear your perspective and how, like, I'm sure you handled, if not all, but a lot of the recruiting side of things and getting more athletes to come to the program and be a part of the team. What does that for Division III rowing, just in general, and then also you can narrow it down into more specifically, you know, with your program, but even just in general for athletes, like what does that process look like from the Division III standpoint of finding athletes, and how do you kind of identify who's the right fit? Like, is it maybe not as much about speed? Is it more about culture fit? Or maybe it is about speed and then the culture fit, you know, in terms of like, will they come in and be someone who kind of, you know, fits the mold of what we're looking for as a team? Like, describe that piece. How are you finding athletes? How do you guys find athletes? And what are those things that you actually look for in aspiring athletes for your program?
All right. So I have to like be really frank that recruiting is one of my weakest points. And with Becky and me working together, we collectively were pretty weak recruiters. Because there is this sense of like inclusion and like you show up, you want to work hard, I'll make you fast. You know, we're both really confident in that. And so, but yeah, like this is the time where like part of me, this is the thing that makes me feel really old is that I still feel like, oh yeah, we'll get enough walk-ons. We don't anymore. It's a different world. And I'm extremely grateful to Greg Size is my assistant. And he is really helping me have a new attitude about recruiting and like seeing it not as like, you know, I kind of just wanted to be like, hey, here's our product. Our product is Ithaca College. The programs that we have, I'll tell you the kind of experience you can have on our team, and then you make the decision. You know, that was I'm a little like laissez-faire that way. Where I'm like, if it is meant to be, destiny will bring us together. And Greg is really strengthening our ability to recruit. I think the things in general, like what I want high school students to know is right because of this sense for me that like there is a spot for everyone. It just might not be at the college you think it's at. You know, so if like we talk to a fair number of people that are just desperate to like say that they're a D1 athlete, they were recruited to D1, like something in their head is stuck saying that is success, is if I can go D1. And I'm like, do you know how many D1 schools we can beat? Is it about going fast or is it about having a label? Is it about being part of a specific type of team, if you want to go to a specific school for a different reason and they have a team and the speed of the team relative to their conference isn't important, you just want to go and compete and have teammates, and like then it doesn't, then that's what's important to you, and that's okay. Like if you are I think D3 is a wonderful place for people who are earlier in their training age, or they in their heart of hearts don't want to do 2-a-days every day, or they do want a chance to compete for a national championship. Like just last night I was looking at lists of D3 versus D1 schools. There's so many D1 schools. There's so many more D1 schools than D3. It doesn't mean that it's harder to get recruited to yeah, we're more exclusive. We're but I do think that we have more. I can't even classify it by division. It's really school by school. Like who can they take? How big is their roster allowed to be? And what competitions do you go to? If you go there, will you ever get a chance to race? Or are you going to sit in their 4V? Does their 4V travel? Because maybe their 4V is awesome and you get every race opportunity you wanted. But if you want a chance to, and like, at least for us, I'm just not sitting high enough. Like we have our sculling program. So like there's an extra, piece for us where if you want a chance to spend some of your college rowing career in a small boat. And I say that, but like Cornell's out here in our inlet rowing pairs all the time. It's not like you don't get to row small boats at a bigger school, but that's, we do get to sell our sculling program a little bit. I think the people that we want to see in are just, it ties into what I was saying before, the people who are eager to learn and don't want to spread the poison of hating themselves. Like I think there's a lot of people who try to find success by beating themselves up and telling themselves like, yeah, being mean to themselves. And if that's how you talk to yourself, you're probably going to, especially if you're fast, your teammates are going to see you and be like, oh, that must be what it means to be a fast person. Is you've got to be really hard on yourself and super mean to yourself. I actually don't think that's true. I think that if we could be kinder to ourselves and more positive with ourselves, like how many people do mental training, positive self-talk, that kind of stuff, like, it's obviously hard, it takes practice to be kind to yourself. For a lot of people. And so, if we could pick, those are the kind of teammates that we want, are people with a good head start on being curious. Like, if I call you out and say that you're skying your blade, you don't think I'm telling you that you're a bad person. You're just like, one of the favorite athletes that I got to coach, I'm just names dropping now, is Savannah Bria, who's over at Orion now, who has, made the national team and gotten close a couple other times. And she was super fun to coach because, you'd be like, you're doing that thing again. And she'd give you this little look like, oh, you got me. Like, it's sort of, she was like really happy to get called out on stuff. And then she was in a boat with some other teammates who, like, you could only give them one thing a day or there was a good chance they'd start crying. Which is also fine. Crying is just a way to process stuff. But it was like, it's really fun to work with the athletes who are like, give me more. What can I do today? What can I do more? I'm making every answer the most long-winded thing ever. So.
No, you're good. You're good. But I wanted to bridge off that. Well, two things that you highlighted, right? I can't agree more with, or actually one thing you did say, and I was looking at the results and stuff like that. Some of your races from earlier this year, or, this year, like, the crossover between a competitive D3 program and, kind of the middle of the road D1 programs, like, you guys are competing with all those teams, and the speed and the like comparison speed. And then, okay, like, so if it's purely about, going fast or being a part of a team that competes at a very high level, Division 3 D1, like there's really, kind of there's differences between those, or sorry, it's not necessarily about the division, it's about the program itself. Like
Right.
you guys have been successful against, numerous Division 1 teams, and I'm sure there's other, Division 3
But we're,
programs who are just,
yeah, we're competitive. I feel like we've had really good races in years swapping back and forth with Marist and Colgate. We took our novices down to Bucknell this year for like some scrimmaging, and Bucknell did some sculling and would race us for a while. And yeah, there's like, and I'm not saying that that's like, oh, because they're a slow D1. I'm not trying to like throw shade on. It's just that the programs are in, they're all individual programs. I do think that it's interesting that there's a lot of high school students that don't understand exactly what the difference in the divisions are, and they automatically think it's like a ranking, like Division 1, 2, 3, and that's the layering of how good it is. And you know what? And there's people out there rowing at a club level that are smoking fast,
yeah,
and you can't sleep on anyone. And like, but also like, if you in your heart want to have something that's a little bit more like a recreational activity where you don't have to travel a lot, and maybe you don't, like, that's a different level of club team, or even some of the varsity teams that are less, you can look online and you can see what people's racing schedules are to see like, how often do you want to race? Is racing fun for you, or is that like a lot of pressure that you don't really like?
no. And I think the other thing that you highlighted too that I really love, and it's kind of why I love having, I think a lot of times, especially within rowing, because it is like, and I know this from the men's side, especially because I think it's even bigger on the men's side because there's less programs, but it's like, it's very Northeast, very, like high, top level academic programs that also have a top level rowing programs. And these are the elite schools and everyone else is kind of down here, this and that. And it's like, why I personally, like, I think a lot of athletes are kind of fed that noise of like, hey, you have to be at these programs and this is Division 1 and to get here. And this is why I love having conversations with, Division 3 coaches and learning from them, because they are just as, again, like they're just as competitive, if not more competitive than a lot of the other schools that are brand names, and helping educate, or enlighten, I guess is a better word, enlighten athletes on some of the other opportunities that are out there to have just this competitive experience. But yeah, it may not be the quote unquote brand name of X school or this or Division 1 attached to it. But on race day, when you look over here, they're going past some of those programs. So again, it's more about every school, and that's where I always kind of think about, like, when you're thinking about schools, it starts with the school first. The rowing program kind of comes second. Like, okay, where do you want to go for school? Like, and where do you want to go for, what are the pillars that you're going to be basing your search off of? And then division and all that should be, hey, I love schools up in New York and this, and this, and, they have exactly what I want to study. And, oh, wait, they have a Division 3 program, but they're actually pretty good. Right. So anyway, I think that I love that you said that with the brand names and the allure of D1 versus D3. Not that one's better than the other. It's just, what do you want as an athlete? I think that's a bigger thing. And with that, as we kind of like start to wrap up here, and be conscious of your time, you have racing this weekend, all these different things. I can't let you go. I got like two more questions for you. I can't let you go until I hear your Ithaca is the only website I've ever been on where sculling is listed as its own separate, what looks like varsity sport at the school, like, or on the athletic site, right, as its own kind of, sport and team. Obviously, I know that they're, a condensed, rowing's rowing and this and that, but like, dive into that, please. Like, I think that's very unique. And it was the thing that as soon as I went on the website, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've never seen that before. And how did that materialize? And what do you feel like that offers to athletes? You've highlighted it a little bit before, but what do you feel like that offers to the athletes who want to be a part of it?
So the interesting thing about it is that was I give Becky Robinson so much credit for, I mean, honestly, so many things in my life and career. You know, like she's been an amazing mentor. And during the phase that happened, Ithaca was needed to do something to go more into gender equity compliance. And so they were looking at adding adding a sport, and they were like, should it be water polo? Should it be equestrian? Should it be like, and Becky, to that point, had been the full-time head coach and had only ever gotten like part-time and volunteer assistant coaches. And so she's like, I could really use a full-time assistant coach. And if I can write a proposal to have sculling as a different sport, so it actually is a budgeted differently, right? Like it's a different pool. It is its own sport, varsity sport in terms of the college and how that's funded. And so that gets into like the wonky, like the only real difference between club and varsity is who pays for everything, you know? And so like varsity gets to be supported. So and she basically could say, look, we have a facility. Here's this assistant coach. You could turn her from part-time to full-time. We would eventually need some equipment, but here's what we already have in the house. So it was kind of like sell the school on making it an easy ad. And then we actually had she asked a bunch of people who had rowed post-collegiately to write letters talking about the advantages of sculling. And so some of it is that it helps the rowing team. You get the small boat experience and boat feel and steering yourself and understanding the rules of rowing because you don't have a coxswain to do it for you. And also the ability for when you graduate, you can go and join any club and be able to get up and running and function without having, it's hard to find a group of sweep masters rowers who are free at the same time of day. So it was kind of like, also for future, like there are athletes at the D3 level who can go on and row at the elite level. And if they, like, that's kind of a gateway into it, especially if they're someone who's a little bit smaller, is like, if you can move a single well, then your results will speak for themselves. And then also the speaking of smaller athletes, giving people who might not have the size and the horsepower to make your 1V or 2V a chance to like get in a boat and move their own body weight and be successful. And one of the fascinating things, I'm like, oh man, we're just like, we're just going to paperwork them into like being like, fine, add your team, whatever. But as we coached it the first few years, all of those other things started coming true. It was like people's ability to move the big boats, people's ability to graduate and join a club, or even start higher level training right after graduation. And then I remember, because it was two really small athletes rowing a double, and they never made it out of the 3V, and they were constantly at the bottom of the erg list. We had approached them at one point because we were short on coxswains to be like, hey, would you be interested in coxing? And you'd maybe have a chance at a more competitive boat. And both of them, it was like instant tears, hard no. And it was their senior year, and they rowed a double at the head of the fish, and they passed people, and they came off the water like practically like they were stunned. They were practically like in tears. They were like, we passed 3 boats. Like they had just, seen an elephant on the water or something, like they were just so surprised that they were actually good. And that for me was one of the more like heartwarming, one of the best reasons is to like, yeah, give people evidence that they're good enough.
That's all.
Um,
That's unique.
yeah.
And is it like a spring? Like, is it considered a spring sport, a fall
we
sport? Because there's more sculling opportunities. Like
yeah, it's
athlete,
a
yeah.
fall. We run it as a fall sport, and
Ah,
it
okay.
does have its separate roster. I'm pretty adamant with like, except with the exception of the head of the Charles, where it's like everyone's trying to scrap into that boat. Um, that it's the scullers scull, the sweepers sweep throughout that season. The scullers end up with more competitive opportunities. There were a lot of years where our roster was big enough that really was about half the people would scull only all fall and half the people would sweep. The last couple of years, our roster size has been small, so small that all of the returners, like basically the novices, would do their learn to row and that kind of stuff sweeping, and every single returner or recruit would scull. Where hopefully our roster is going to get big enough that we're going to have to divide again, because it really is a lot of people to watch, and it's hard to coordinate the practices when there's more than 16 or 18 people sculling. But that kind of high teens team seems to be the sweet spot. And yeah, and it kind of favors upperclassmen who, right, like when you look at your sweep boat, especially in the fall, and you've got some seniors in there and you've got some sophomores in there, like those seniors look pretty clean. And so all of a sudden you have seniors who are like, I know everything, I'm making no mistakes. And they become a little less coachable because they like, when you finally pick on them, they're like, that's not important. Or like, I don't even believe you. I'm the one keeping this together. Or you ride the sophomores the whole time because they stick out so badly. And when you put those upperclassmen in singles, all of a sudden they're not so, they're a little more humble. Like, or like, and it also helps build their leadership. You put someone in the bow of a double and say, yeah, take your pick. You're the stroke seat and you're setting the pace and that pressure's on you. Or you're the bow seat and you're steering and you're making the calls and that pressure's on you. And like, I think that both of those help build their belief in themselves. And also it's like that balance. It's the belief in themselves and it's also the humility of like, oh, I still have things to learn. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I feel like that's such a unique thing. Again, it stuck right out to me, and I think it's something that's very cool, and maybe it's even repeatable for other teams out there. Like it's very unique to kind of see that on a roster page.
I would love to see it. I would love to see more schools. I know RIT in Rochester, they come down and play with us in some of our sculling events. They'll enter some doubles at head of the Genesee, and they'll come down to our home race. Like Tufts had a lot of sculling for a while. Like we used to have a nice race out at UMass when Jim Dietz was still there, because he had them doing a lot of sculling. And like, yeah, some schools have dropped that to change their focus on more of the big boats. But come on out, anyone listening, put your people in small boats and come race us. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. That's cool. My last kind of question for you before we start to wrap things up. I was curious about this as well, but we're not curious. I just want to hear your, like, as we talk about your school, your program, and you rode at Ithaca, you coached there as an assistant, both volunteer and full time for, over a decade. You're head coach now, and I think just for people listening, what for you attracts you to Ithaca College, the school, the program, and take it wherever you want. But I think there has to be something that, obviously, right? Same thing with me and where I went to school and why I wanted to coach there again. But for you, obviously it's been a very, very long and fun journey to keep you where you are today. What is it about the school? Could be the area of, like the beauty of the area. I don't know, whatever it is, but the school, the rowing program, the where it is in the country, kind of like, what is it that keeps you latched on there for so long? And then obviously for the long run, as you kick off your time leading the charge now.
I think as a whole, the campus matches my ethic of explore, like that there's not one right way to live your life, and you get to make your own path and be creative with it. And also there's a lot of support. Like, people want to see you succeed. I also think there's a lot of transparency, where like I'm not a person that always like says the right thing in the most clean, buzzwordy, professional manner. Which, right, for a long time, right, people being hard on themselves, like I was just like, oh, I'm unprofessional. And then one of my coaches, a coach from a different team, was like, I really appreciate your candor in meetings. And I'm like, oh, I'm not unprofessional. I have candor. All right. No, so but there's something about the campus, I think, as a whole, that it's like we are trying to be honest and say, here's what we have, here is our value, we believe in our value. It is a beautiful area of the world. It's a college town that, I think, because there's so much youth and so many students here who are like in that phase of life where you're like excited about what's next, that it has a hopeful feel in the town. A lot of the time, like, there are things to do, there's small businesses, and I think people try to make it a nice place to be. It is a size that I don't feel is overwhelming. Like, I've lived in cities, and over time, like, there's things, like there's I have great affection for my time in Philly. I love biking through Philly in the middle of the night. That's a really great experience. And having like the big rowing community there and things like that. But I think at a certain size, like, I just have trouble when there gets to be so many people that like you can't care about everybody. I think there is a certain harshness that comes from like, you can't fix everything, you can't be around, like sometimes someone's just going to shout at you. Sometimes someone's going to throw something out their car window at you while you're biking. Sometimes someone's going to, like, there's this little harsh edge that I was like, oh, maybe I'm just too soft for this place. But it's the program. And it was like, I came back and was an assistant for so long because it's not the brand name that's the most important to me, and it's not the title that's the most important to me. Like, I think there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I can't wait to be a head coach. And I'm like, I don't need to be a head coach. I just want to be part of a team that works really well. And I was always really proud of the people who came out of Ithaca, the talent and the intellect that our students have, the spirit of adventure that a lot of them have. So there's something about the personalities here that feels like enough, that I never had to chase something different. Like, what I had here was enough, and I didn't, I'm actually pretty far from home. My family's from the Chicago area, and every now and then I feel a little guilty for finding a place that's so far from them. And I always imagine, like, I always have 6 different alternate lives in my head of like, but I could be giving bike tours in Germany, or I could be coaching in the Chicago area. Like, what would that look like? But there is so much here now that is is worth staying for. I like the community, and I've just loved being part of this team and helping the athletes do it themselves. Ultimately, like, you go to college to develop yourself. And I feel really coaching is such this voyeuristic job, like you really watch them go through it. And you get to feel like pride in being part of, I don't know, something they're really doing for themselves. But like seeing someone grow over those 4 years, and there's such a big 4 years in someone's life. Yeah, it's, I like it here.
No, I think that's a perfect and obviously something's kept you there for so long. Obviously, you just highlighted a lot of it, and I think to me, like, that speaks to a program because like you've established roots in a good way there, where it's like, hey, this means something to me. This isn't just a destination for a year or two. Like, if a coach comes here, or sorry, if an athlete comes here, they can expect me, and probably expect me for their entire journey here, and to kind of have that built-in leader, but more importantly, mentor and person they look up to, for the entire time they're there. So I think that's something that always is important, or that I feel is very important for athletes who are looking, to row at the next level. With that, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, one last thing about that is that, like, a lot of times, whatever other conversations, like, I guess, did we even talk about rowing during any of this? For me, rowing is about the philosophy, and it's about making people. So I feel like I'm an educator. Like, okay, I'm a rowing coach, but I feel like I'm an educator because it's like, maybe I'm not out there making like the fastest rowers in the world. Like, I'm making some pretty fast rowers, but for me, it's like, I feel like I'm there to help people develop as people, and rowing is just like the tool that I use to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I can't agree more. In, like, I think that's a great kind of mission to be a part of coaching, something to have with coach. Like, so Beth, this was awesome. I really enjoyed talking to you. We could totally do a whole another hour and a half talking about a lot of these different topics, because this was a lot of fun. But I want to be conscious
I bet there's people who come in and like talk about like technique and catches and like rowing. I don't know.
No, this is exactly what I love talking about. Like, again, it goes in, like we talked about before, right? It goes any direction, but these kinds of conversations where I can just hear other coaches' perspectives and what led them to where they are, and how that kind of transfers to, the athletes and the leadership to the athletes. Like, those are the things I personally love talking about. But with that, NCAA is in a couple of weeks. You have NIRC this weekend. Big things coming up. Any last things that we should know about you and Ithaca and what's coming up, or coming up in the rest of the season? And then, if you can, just share a little bit about where we can find you if any athletes are interested in learning a little bit more about the program as we wrap things up.
Yeah, we will be at NIRC this weekend. That's our NCAA sneak preview, and hopefully a chance to measure ourselves against other people, see where we're at. I think the next 3 weeks, we are focusing on places where we can tweak details, right? I want to tweak details and get people feeling more confident and like more trust in their ability to execute. And yeah, if people want to get in touch with me, probably just like everyone, we have a recruiting questionnaire on our website. They can find me at Greene, EGREENE at ithaca.edu, ITHACA. And also, the recruit questionnaire is probably the best, because I am lousy with responding to emails in a timely fashion. And Greg Size, my assistant, is amazing like he makes it look so easy. But he has a great time connecting with people. And now it's to the point where he'll have a conversation with someone and then be like, oh, I just talked to this kid and they're awesome. And like, and for me, it's the conversing. And when I hear about why someone else is excited about someone, that helps me. So helps those athletes stick out and be memorable. But we're a great school for communications, TV, radio, journalism. We are excellent. Physical therapy, we have one of the premier programs in the country. It's a 6-year doctorate, which is an accelerated program. So a lot of real fantastic nerds in that program. I say that in a really good way. They impress me so much. But the health sciences, occupational therapy, we have a very good theater and music school. We have our business school is one of the ones. I know there's a lot of, it has a focus on sustainability, good environmental science program, and then of course liberal arts. You know, all the basics, all the English, history, education, math, like that kind of. Yeah, I always forget to sell the school.
No, I think that works, and obviously you sold the program and the area and all the things that kind of bring that in. So we'll put a link to your the website and stuff like that. That way people can go and fill out the questionnaire if they have follow-up questions. But no, Beth, this was a blast. I really enjoyed talking with you. I learned a lot. And with that, good luck as you obviously, kind of work your way through the prequel championships that are kind of coming up, and then kind of work your way to the NCAA championship, in a few weeks. We'll be tuning in. I'll be tuning in, obviously, checking in. But thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast.
Thank you for the opportunity. I feel very special.
No, you crushed it. This is awesome. I love it. So thank you so much.